It was a quiet morning when Mira was born. The hospital room was filled with soft light from the window, and the nurses moved gently, speaking in low voices. Her mother held her for the first time and smiled. She had tiny hands, calm eyes, and didn't cry like most babies. Instead, Mira just looked around, blinking slowly. The doctor said she was healthy, and her parents took her home, thinking they had been blessed with a peaceful baby. As the months passed, Myra remained quiet. She made small sounds like any baby, but she never cried loudly or laughed out loud. Her mother tried everything, tickling her, playing music, making silly faces, but Myra only smiled softly. She watched people closely, always observing, but never making much noise. By the time she turned 1, her parents started to worry. Most babies say their first words around that age, simple things like mama or dada, but Mira was silent. She understood what was said to her. If her mother asked her to pick up a toy, she would do it. If her father called her name, she would turn and look, but she didn't speak, not even a word. Doctors checked her ears and throat. They did all kinds of tests, but nothing was wrong. Her hearing was perfect. Vocal cords were fine. The doctors said she'll speak when she's ready, but the days turned into months and still dashed silence. At preschool, Myra sat alone most of the time. The other children laughed and shouted, playing with toys, running around, getting messy with paint and sand. Mira sat in the corner watching. Sometimes she would play with a doll or stack blocks quietly, but she never joined in games or talked to anyone. Teachers noticed. They tried to help. One teacher, Miss Clara, knelt beside her one day and said, "Would you like to draw, Mira?" Nodded. That was the only way she responded, by nodding or shaking her head. She drew every day after that. Her drawings were beautiful, even though she was so small. She would draw animals, houses, people, trees. But one thing was always the same. No one in her drawings had a mouth. Every face she drew had eyes, a nose, ears, but no mouth. The teachers whispered about it. "Do you think she's scared of something?" one of them asked. "Maybe she can talk, but chooses not to." Her parents didn't know what to do. They loved her deeply, but sometimes they cried at night, wondering what was happening inside her mind. Why won't she speak? Her mother whispered one evening, holding Mira's tiny shoes in her hands. "She's so bright. She knows everything we say." As Mira grew older, people started giving her names. "The quiet girl," they said. "The girl who doesn't talk." At school, some kids made fun of her. They would shout in front of her, face, or pretend to speak in slow motion. Mira never reacted. She didn't cry, didn't run away. She simply stayed still like a tree in the wind, silent but strong. Some children were kind to her. A girl named Lena once sat beside her during lunch and gave her half of her sandwich without saying a word. Mira smiled and nodded. That was enough. They sat together after that. No talking. Just being there was enough for Mira. But even the kind ones couldn't understand her. Mira seemed to live in a world inside her head, far away from everyone else. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't happy either. She was just quiet, like a room where someone used to sing, but now only silence remains. At home, her parents tried to keep her world full of love. Her father read her bedtime stories every night, even though she never asked for them. Her mother baked her favorite cookies and decorated her room with soft lights and colors. Mira liked her room. It was her own little world. She kept her drawings on the walls, arranged her books by color, and sometimes sat by the window for hours just watching the sky change. She loved nature. When they went to the park, she would lie on the grass and watch the clouds move. She would walk slowly, touching leaves, listening to birds, always calm, always quiet. Her parents noticed how her eyes lit up when she heard birds singing, or the sound of water running in a stream. She never said anything, but you could feel her emotions in the way she looked at the world once. When she was about 7, a distant uncle came to visit. He didn't understand Mira. "She's too old to act like this," he said. "Maybe she needs to be scared a little. She'll talk then." Her father's face turned red with anger. "Don't you ever say that," he said. "She's perfect the way she is." After that, the uncle never visited again. Years passed, and Mira still didn't speak. But by now, her family had stopped asking why. They accepted her silence, even though it still hurt them sometimes. Her mother wished she could hear her say, "I love you." Da! Her father dreamed of hearing her laugh, but instead of pushing her, they simply loved her more. Then one evening, something unusual happened. Mira and her parents went to visit an old family friend. Their house was filled with books, paintings, and old furniture. Mira wandered through the rooms slowly, taking everything in. Then she came to a small room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly open. She pushed it gently. Inside was a piano. It stood quietly in the corner, covered with a lace cloth. Sunlight came through the window and touched the wooden keys. Mira walked over to it. She reached out and pressed one key. A soft sound came out. Her eyes widened slightly. She pressed another. A higher sound, then another. A lower one. Her fingers began to move over the keys, slowly, like someone discovering a secret language. She didn't know what she was doing, but somehow it felt right. Each sound seemed to match a feeling inside her, a memory, a color.
Wow.
A whisper of something that had always been there, waiting. Her mother came into the room and saw her standing at the piano. She didn't say anything, just watched as Mira touched the keys again and again. That night on the way home, Mira sat quietly in the car. But something was different. Her fingers tapped softly on her legs, like they were still playing the piano. In her mind, after that, she kept asking to go back to that house. She would tug on her mother's sleeve and point in the direction of the road. Her mother understood. They visited again, and Mira went straight to the piano. She played longer this time, still slow, still uncertain. But there was something magical in the way she touched the keys, the family friend noticed. Would she like to come every week, he asked. No. She can use the piano whenever she wants. Mira nodded eagerly. Her eyes shone every week she went. At first just once, then twice, then 3 times. She began playing more confidently. She didn't read music. No one taught her. She simply listened, felt, and played. Her music wasn't perfect, but it was full of emotion. You could feel her heart in every note. It was then that her parents decided to buy her a piano of her own. They couldn't afford a new one, but they found an old upright piano from a local music store. It had a few scratches, and some of the keys were yellowed with age, but to Mira it was beautiful. When it arrived, she sat in front of it for a long time, just staring. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. Her mother stood in the hallway, tears in her eyes. Her daughter still hadn't said a word, but through the music. It felt like she was speaking for the first time. From that day on, Mira played every morning and every evening. Her hands learned to move faster, her ear grew sharper. She created little tunes, each one like a message. She would play when she was happy, when she was sad, when she missed something she couldn't name. Her music changed with her feelings. It was as if her soul had found a door. And that door was the piano. People still called her the quiet girl, but now they said it with respect. Because Mira may have been silent, but when she sat down at the piano, the whole world seemed to listen. She didn't need words. She had found something more powerful than speech. She had found her voice. Mira's world was made of quiet things. She loved sounds, not the kind that came from voices, but the gentle, hidden ones, the rustling of leaves out, the creaking of an old wooden door, the hum of insects on a summer evening. These were the things she listened to, not with her ears alone, but with her whole being. While most people hurried through their days, Mira noticed the small details no one else did. It was like she had a secret language with the world, and only she understood it. She still did not speak, not at home, not at school, not even a whisper. But her parents no longer waited for her first word. It accepted her silence and watched her grow into it like a second skin. They spoke to her with gentle words and soft eyes, and Mira answered with nods, touches, and her quiet, steady presence. At school, she remained the girl who didn't talk. She had 1 or 2 classmates who liked to sit near her during breaks, but they had learned not to expect answers. Myra's way of connecting was different. She helped pick up a dropped pencil, offered a handmade drawing without being asked. She shared her lunch when someone forgot theirs. These were her ways of saying, "I care," even though no sound ever passed her lips. Her teachers sometimes forgot she was even in the room till they saw her work. Her art projects were full of emotion. Her stories, written with neat, careful handwriting, often moved teachers to tears. Though she never read them aloud, they carried a depth no one expected from a girl who lived in silence. Still, her voice, her real voice, remained a mystery. Her classmates often wondered what it would sound like if she ever spoke. Would it be soft, sweet, strange? But Mira gave them no clue. One summer afternoon, Mira went with her parents to visit an old friend of her mother's. It was a warm day, and the sun poured through the windows as they entered the house. The place smelled of books, dust, and cinnamon. The man who lived there was kind, with gentle eyes and slow hands. His name was Mr. Johann. He had been a music teacher long ago, but now he lived alone in a house full of memories. While her parents chatted with Mr. Johann in the living room, Mira wandered quietly through the house. She moved slowly, her fingers brushing across the tops of shelves and picture frames. The walls were covered in paintings and photographed smiling faces, old landscapes, faded memories. She felt like she had stepped into someone else's story. At the end of the hallway, she found a room with the door slightly open. Something pulled her toward it. She pushed the door gently and peeked inside. There, in the middle of the room, stood a piano. It was old. The wood had faded over time, and the corners were chipped. Lace cloth lay across the top, yellowed with age. But to Mira, it looked like a treasure, like something waiting to be discovered. She stepped inside, as if drawn by an invisible thread, and walked slowly toward the piano. She ran her fingers lightly along the keys, feeling the cool surface. Beneath her fingertips, she pressed one. A single note rang out, soft, pure. It hung in the air like a bird that had just taken flight. Mira froze. Then she pressed another key. A higher sound, then another. She moved along the keyboard, one note at a time, carefully, like she was learning to speak in a new language. She didn't know what she was doing. No one had taught her, but something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, something made perfect sense. Behind her, Mr. Johann had entered the room without making a sound. He stood by the door watching her. He didn't interrupt. He didn't speak. Simply listened. When Myra turned and saw him, she didn't run or look away. She looked into his eyes, and he smiled. "You can touch it any time you like," he said softly. "This piano has been lonely for many years." Mira looked back at the keys. She touched them again, this time with both hands. Not playing, just exploring. Mr. Johann left her alone in the room, letting her spend time with the piano in silence. When it was time to leave, Myra stood near the door, looking back at the room. Her eyes told her mother everything she wanted to come back, and so they did. Every weekend, Mira returned to Mr. Johann's house. She would go straight to the music room, sit at the piano, and begin to play. At first, it was just simple sounds, random notes, soft chords, playful melodies. She had no training, no lessons, and yet she played with feeling. Each time, she grew a little bolder, a little more curious. She began creating short patterns of music, gentle and sad, light and curious. Her hands were slow, but her heart was full. Mr. Johann never tried to teach her the traditional way. He saw that Mira was different. Instead of telling her what to do, he asked questions. "What do you feel when you play that note? Does that sound like the morning or the night?" Mira never answered with words. She would nod or shake her head, and then she would play again. Her fingers became more confident. She started to remember the sounds she liked. She played them again and again until they became little songs of her own. Music became her second language, the one that felt more natural than words ever could. One day, while Mira was playing, Dor Johann sat in the corner of the room, quietly watching her. Her hands moved over the piano like water flowing through a stream. The notes she played were slow, deep, and full of something heavy. When she finished, The room was completely still. Mr. Johann spoke softly. That sounded like someone was trying to say something they've been holding inside for a long time. Mira looked up at him. Her eyes were wide but calm. She didn't need to say anything. Her music had said it all, as weeks turned into months. Myra's connection with the piano deepened. Her parents noticed the change in her. She began waking up earlier, as if excited about the day. She smiled more often, and though she still didn't speak, her silence no longer felt so heavy. It had changed. It was now full of expression. At home, she didn't have a piano. She would tap her fingers on the table, on the windowsill, on her knees. Her parents saw it and knew they had to bring music into her life. They didn't have much money, but they searched every store in town until they found a second-hand keyboard. It was old and had a few broken buttons, but when Mira saw it, her face lit up in a way they had never seen before. She touched the keys gently, just like she had at Mr. Johann's house. Her mother wiped away tears as she watched. Mira played that keyboard every day. She created new melodies. She experimented with sounds. She played fast when she was excited, slow when she was sad. She told stories with her music, stories she had never told anyone, maybe not even herself. Her parents would often sit nearby and listen. They didn't speak, didn't ask questions. They just listened. At school, Myra was still the quiet girl, but her teachers began to notice something different. During music class, while the other kids played simple songs from books, Myra played pieces of her own. The music teacher, Miss Reina, was amazed. "Where did you learn that?" she asked one day. Mira simply tilted her head and smiled. Miss Reina began encouraging her. She offered Mira chances to perform, but Mira always shook her head. She didn't want crowds or applause. She just wanted to play. It wasn't about attention. It was about expression. She didn't want to be seen. She wanted to be heard. One day, Mira's parents received a letter. It was from a youth music competition. Miss Reina had sent a recording of Myra's playing without telling her. She deserves to be heard, she said. Even if she never steps on the stage, her music should speak for her. Myra was chosen. She didn't understand at first. Her parents explained gently, showing her the letter. She read it once, then again. Her eyes filled with something, fear maybe, or wonder. She didn't shake her head. She didn't run away. Instead, she walked quietly to the keyboard and began to play a new piece. It was soft and strong at the same time, like someone was preparing for something big, and that's when it became clear. Even without words, Mira had found something that could hold everything inside her. Her thoughts, her dreams, her fears. The music was not just notes, it was her voice. A voice the world was beginning to hear. The day of the music competition was getting closer, and Mira could feel the change in the air. It was not like the quiet mornings she usually enjoyed, where the world moved slowly and gently. Now every minute felt like a new sound. She didn't know how to play yet. Her parents tried not to make her nervous. They didn't talk about the event too much. They didn't push her. They simply gave her space, just like they always had. But still, Mira knew something important was coming. She had never performed in front of people before. Her music was always something private, something that came from deep inside her. She didn't make it for applause or praise. It was her way of speaking without using her mouth. It was how she told her story, how she said everything she couldn't say in words, and now strangers would hear it. People would look at her, judge her, listen to her heart through her fingers. That thought made her chest feel tight, like she couldn't breathe properly. She practiced every day, not just the piece she had planned to play, but also the feeling behind it. She sat in front of her keyboard for hours, her eyes closed, her fingers dancing over the keys like they were telling a secret. Sometimes she would stop and listen to the silence that followed. Sometimes she would start again from the beginning. Her music was never just about hitting the right notes. It was about something much more. That it was about truth. Mr. Johann helped her prepare. Adash. She visited him every Saturday and played on his piano, the same one she had discovered months ago. Dada. He listened quietly, always sitting in the same corner of the room, his eyes half closed, his mind completely open. After each piece, he would smile and say only one word: beautiful. That was all she needed. She didn't want instructions or praise. She only needed someone to listen with their heart. A week before the competition, Mira asked her father to take her to the concert hall where the event would take place. She wanted to see it first. She didn't say a word, of course, but her eyes said everything. So her father took the day off work, and the two of them went together. The hall was huge. It had hundreds of red velvet seats, high ceilings, and lights that made everything shine. Mira stood at the back of the room and stared at the stage, looked far away, like another world. She walked slowly down the aisle and stood in front of it. Then she stepped up, one stair at a time, until she was standing in the center. There was no one else in the room, just Mira and the silence. She sat at the piano on the stage and placed her hands on the keys. She didn't play, not yet. She just sat there, breathing, imagining the sounds, imagining the people. Her father watched from the last row, his heart full. He didn't say anything. He knew not to break the moment. Later, as they walked home, Mira tapped her fingers on her leg again. She was thinking, not about fear, but about the music she would play. She had decided to write something new, something special just for the competition. It wasn't about winning. She didn't care about trophies or certificates, just wanted the world to hear one clear message: this is who I am. So she began composing. At night, after dinner, she sat by the window with a small notebook and pencil. She didn't write down notes like most musicians. She wrote feelings. She wrote memories. She wrote colors. Soft like rain on glass, dark like the space under the bed, red like Mama's sweater. These were the pieces of her music. They didn't look like a song, but when she sat at the keyboard and played, those words turned into sound. Her heart knew the way. On the morning of the competition, Mira woke up before sunrise. She sat on the floor beside her keyboard and touched the keys gently, not to practice, but to remind herself that they were still her friends. Her mother made her favorite breakfast, soft pancakes with honey and warm milk. Mira ate quietly, her fingers tapping on the table in rhythm. They left the house early. Her parents dressed nicely, but not too fancy. They didn't want to make Mira feel like this was something she had to perform for. They just wanted to support her. On the way to the hall, her mother held her hand and squeezed it gently, not asking questions, not giving advice, just being there. When they arrived, the building was full of people. Children carrying violins, guitars, flutes, parents fixing shirts, smoothing hair, whispering last-minute reminders. Everyone was busy. Everyone was talking except Mira. She stood quietly, watching the crowd, her notebook clutched in her hand. A kind woman from the event team came over and smiled. "You must be Mira," she said gently. Mira nodded. The woman led her backstage where other kids waited for their turn. Some were nervous, bouncing their knees or biting their nails. Mira sat still, eyes closed, listening to the sounds of the stage, the piano, the clapping, the announcements, and then it was her turn. Her name was called. Next, we welcome Mira Singh, performing her original piano piece. She walked slowly onto the stage. The lights were bright, and the silence was heavy. Hundreds of people were watching. She didn't look at them. She walked straight to the piano and sat down. Her hands shook a little. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and played. The first note was soft, like the start of a whisper. Then came another, then a few more. Slowly, gently, she built a melody. It rose like sunlight through a window, then fell like a sigh. It danced, it wept, it wondered. Every note was a word she had never spoken. Every chord was a feeling she had hidden deep inside her heart. The audience sat in complete silence. Not one sound, not one cough. Just the music, as the piece continued. Mira felt something happen inside her. The fear faded. The lights disappeared. The stage became her room. The piano became her voice. Her soul stopped whispering and began to sing. She played about the days she spent watching birds in the trees, about the nights she stared at the stars, wondering what her voice would sound like if it ever came. She played about loneliness and love, about pain that didn't leave bruises, about hope that lived quietly in her chest. And then the final note. It hung in the air for a long second. and then silence. For a moment no one moved, then came the applause. Not polite clapping. Not just because it was her turn, it was something deeper. People stood up. Some had tears in their eyes.
Aus.
Some didn't even understand why they were crying. They had heard something more than music. They had heard a soul speak. Backstage, the kind woman gave Mira a soft hug. That was beyond words, she said. Mira gave a small smile and returned to her parents. Her mother had tears on her cheeks. Her father placed a hand on her head, proud and quiet. Mira didn't win first. Prize, a boy with a fast violin piece, got the top spot. But it didn't matter, because everyone remembered Myra. They remembered the girl who never spoke, but who made everyone feel something they couldn't explain. After the competition, a video of her performance was shared online by one of the judges. It was titled, "The Girl Who Speaks Through Music." It spread quickly. People from different cities watched it, then people from other countries. Comments flooded in. She plays like she's telling a secret. I don't know who she is, but her music made me cry. I've never heard anything like this. Music teachers, radio hosts, even small newspapers started asking about Mira. Some wanted interviews. Others wanted to invite her to play at concerts. But her parents said no to most of them. Myra didn't want fame. She just wanted to play. Still, something had changed. For the first time, the world had heard her. Strangers sent letters. Some shared stories of their own silence. Some had lost their voices to pain, fear, or trauma.
Hey.
They thanked Mira for reminding them that silence didn't mean emptiness. That music could hold words that were too heavy to say. At school, she became someone different. The girl who had been invisible was now known for something real. Her classmates didn't tease her anymore. Some tried to talk to her, not with pity, but with respect. They asked if they could sit near her at lunch, listen to her music, draw with her. Mira didn't say yes or no. She simply allowed them to stay, and that was enough. She still didn't speak. Her voice remained locked inside her, but her music, her true voice, was free now. She would never let it go. Mira had always lived in silence, but now, for the first time in her life, the world had listened and had heard the scream of her soul through the piano. After the music competition, life changed around Mira, but inside, she remained the same. The quiet girl who once walked in shadows now had light gently following her wherever she went.
Ow.
People noticed her now, but not because she spoke. They noticed her because of how deeply she made them feel, just by touching the piano keys. Her silence was no longer something strange. It had become something powerful. The video of her performance kept spreading. More and more people shared it. Teachers in different schools played it for their students. Musicians talked about it online. A girl with no words had spoken louder than many voices ever could. Yet Mira didn't fully understand the size of what was happening. She didn't care about how many people watched her. She didn't check the video or read the comments. That wasn't what mattered to her. What mattered was the music. Every morning before school, she would sit quietly at her keyboard, eyes still half closed, and let her fingers create new melodies. Sometimes they were soft, like early morning rain. Sometimes they were loud, full of wild energy. She never planned them. They simply came. Her parents now more than ever watched her with wonder. It's their little girl who once wouldn't look. Anyone in the eye was becoming a storyteller, one who used no words, but spoke straight to the heart. But Chenjevan, the good kind, can bring pressure. One evening, Mira came home to find her parents sitting with a stranger in the living room. He was a tall man with a soft voice and kind eyes. He introduced himself as a music director from a well-known academy. He had seen her video and wanted to offer Myra a full scholarship to study music. Her parents looked at her with hopeful smiles. "It's a very big chance," her mother said gently. "They think you're special." Mira sat still. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She simply looked at the man for a long time, then lowered her eyes. She knew her music was special to others now. She knew people wanted to shape her, teach her, guide her. But something in her heart felt tight. Music had always been her secret garden, a place she could go when the world felt too loud. Would it still feel like that if it became a duty? Man left with a polite smile, saying, "Think about it. No rush. Mira went to her room and sat at her keyboard, but that evening she didn't play. Her fingers hovered above the keys, but no sound came. For the first time in weeks, her silence felt heavy again. That night, she dreamed of a stage. She was sitting at a piano, but every key was locked. She pressed and pressed, but no sound came. The crowd in front of her began to whisper, to stare. And just as she was about to scream not with her mouth, but with her soul, she woke up. Her heart was racing. Her eyes were wet. She knew then, music wasn't just something she loved. It was something she needed. She couldn't let the world change what it meant to her, but she also couldn't hide from the world anymore. Her music had touched people. Maybe there was a way to keep her truth and still let others hear it. She began writing again. Not just songs, but pages and pages in her notebooks, words only she would read. Thoughts she'd never spoken, questions she didn't know how to ask. Slowly, she understood something important. She didn't need to reject everything or accept everything. She could choose what was right for her. She didn't need to follow someone else's path. She could walk her own. She met with the Music Academy again, this time at their request. They wanted her to visit, to see their classes, to meet other students. Her parents were nervous, but Myra surprised them. She nodded. She was ready to go. Not because she had made a decision, but because she wanted to see. The school was big and full of sound. Every room held music violins, flutes, cellos, and pianos. The teachers were kind and the students were talented. Mira listened to their playing with quiet eyes. Some pieces were perfect, flawless, but she didn't feel them in her chest the way she felt her own. They were like beautiful flowers made of paper, lovely to look at, but without the smell of something real. When she sat at the piano for her turn, everyone watched silently. She didn't feel nervous this time. She played a new piece one filled with questions. Her fingers asked, "Is this the right place? Will I still be me here? Can music stay mine?" When she finished, the room was still. Then a teacher asked softly, "Did you write that?" Mira nodded. The teacher smiled. "It was full of something I don't know how to name, but I felt it." Mira looked around. She saw faces, some curious, some kind. She realized then that it didn't have to be all or nothing. She could come here and still protect the part of her that made her music pure. She didn't have to become like the others. She just had to remain herself. Later, she told her parents with a simple look. She wanted to join. Her days at the academy were different from her old school. She spent hours learning about music theory, instruments, composers. Sometimes it bored her, sometimes it opened her mind in new ways. She listened more than she spoke. As always, but her music began to grow. It was like a tree, once small, now spreading its branches wider. Reaching new skies, she made a friend, Amira, a violinist with bright eyes and a noisy laugh. Amira talked enough for both of them and never expected Mira to answer. She seemed to understand her silence without making it a big deal. One afternoon, they played together, Amira on the violin, Mira on the piano. Their music danced like wind and rain together. That day, Mira smiled wider than ever before. Not everyone liked her, though. Some students thought she was strange. "She doesn't even talk," one boy whispered during class. "How can she be here?" But Mira didn't let it touch her. Her music answered them better than any words could. As weeks passed, she was invited to more events, concerts, performances, interviews. Her parents were careful. They helped her choose only what felt right. Myra never wanted to be a star. She didn't want flashing lights or red carpets. She wanted real moments, real sounds, real connection. One evening, a letter arrived. It was an invitation from a famous music festival in another country. They wanted her to perform a solo piece, anything she chose. Her family was stunned. It was a huge opportunity. Mira stared at the letter for a long time. She could feel her heart racing, not with fear, but something else. Possibility. She accepted. The months leading up to the festival were full of preparation. Mira worked on her composition every day. It had to be her most honest piece, yet something that carried her whole story inside it. She played parts of it for Mr. Johann. He still listened with the same quiet smile. One day, after hearing the new melody, he said, "It's not just music anymore, Myra. It's a message. The world is finally hearing what's been inside you." All this time, Mira looked at him, eyes bright. She believed him. The trip to the festival was long. It was her first time flying. Her parents came with her. They carried snacks, warm clothes, and her little keyboard, just in case. When they reached the city, it was filled with noise and lights, and people speaking many languages. Mira felt a little lost at first. But then she touched her fingers together, found her rhythm again, and calmed herself with the silent beat she always carried inside. The day of her performance came. The hall was bigger than any she had seen before. Cameras were ready. Musicians from all over the world were backstage. Some were excited. Some were scared. Mira sat in a corner, eyes closed, breathing deeply. Her name was called. She walked to the stage, slow but steady. She sat at the piano, closed her eyes and played. This time her music told the whole story from the very beginning. The loneliness of being silent in a loud world, the way people stared, the pain of not being understood, the beauty of small things, a leaf, a shadow, a quiet morning, the joy of finding a voice without using a mouth. The day she touched the piano for the first time, the way her heart screamed, not in anger, but in need. The piece grew louder, then softer, then rose again like a bird finally flying free. When the final note faded, the hall was silent. Then the applause came, not fast, not loud, but slow and full of meaning. People stood, not because they were told to, because they wanted to, because they felt something they didn't have words for. Mira stood, bowed, and walked off stage. Later that night, in her hotel room, she sat at the window and watched the stars. Her mother brought her hot tea. Her father sat beside her, quiet and calm. Mira took her small notebook and began writing again, not for a song, just for herself. She wrote, "I am not broken. I am just different. I do not speak with sound, but I am always saying something. And now, finally, the world is listening." She smiled, because she knew the truth. Now her silence was never empty. It had just been waiting for the right instrument to be heard. After Mira's performance at the International Festival, things began to move faster than ever. Her name was suddenly known not only in her city or country, but in many parts of the world. People talked about the girl who never spoke but made hearts cry through a piano. Musicians, teachers, and even doctors wrote about her in newspapers and websites. They called her the soul pianist and said she reminded the world that silence is not the absence of voice, but the presence of depth. But while the world was busy praising her, Mira remained the same, quiet, calm, and focused on her music. She didn't care much about the attention. She didn't want to be famous. All she wanted was to keep playing in her own way, feeling her emotions through the piano. She still didn't like noise or too many people. Crowds made her nervous. Cameras confused her. But when she sat at the piano, everything felt right. Her parents protected her. They helped her say no to events that felt too big or unnecessary. They said, "Your piece is more important than any award or invitation." They knew her journey wasn't about fame. It was about healing. It's about freedom. Mira kept studying at the Music Academy. She learned new techniques, styles, and stories behind famous pieces. But even while learning the works of great composers, she always returned to her own music. Her songs were still her voice, her truth. One day, a well-known pianist came to visit the academy. He had played in hundreds of concerts across the world. He had heard of Mira and wanted to meet her, but instead, he found a quiet girl sitting alone, reading a book with her headphones on. When she looked up and saw him, she didn't show fear or excitement. She simply nodded politely and waited. The pianist sat beside her and said, "Your music? It moved me deeply. But I wonder, do you understand what you've done to the world?" Mira looked at him for a long second, then turned her eyes to the piano at the far end of the room. I got up and walked toward it. Why, she sat down and played. It was a small piece, only a few minutes. But every note was a complete answer. When she finished, The man smiled and clapped once. "Yes," he said softly. "You understand more than words could ever say." That evening, he told the teachers at the academy this: "Girl will change music not because she wants to, but because she already has." Still, Myra never let those words grow inside her like pride. She played with her classmates, helped those who struggled, and smiled more often now. Her friend Amira joked, "One day you'll speak. Not because you need to, but just to laugh out loud." Mira grinned. Months passed. Then one day, the academy announced a special program. They wanted Mira to represent them in a tour across 5 countries, performing at different schools and music centers. The goal wasn't just to show talent, but to inspire young musicians, to express their feelings through art, no matter who they were or how different they felt. Mira was unsure at first. She didn't like traveling too much. Meeting new people still made her anxious, but her father said something that helped her decide. "You don't have to change the world, Mira, but if your music can change one person's heart, maybe that's enough." So she agreed. The journey began. The first stop was a small town in Italy. The hall was simple but full. Children of all ages sat with wide eyes waiting. Mira walked on stage and saw a girl in the front row who looked just like her years ago, quiet, hugging her knees, hiding from the world. Mira played that night with that girl in mind. She told her, through music, "You are not alone." After the show, the little girl ran up to Mira and hugged her tightly. She didn't say anything. She just cried softly against Mira's shoulder. Mira gently patted her back. No words were needed. Their silence said it all. In every country they visited, Myra's music reached people who had lost their voice. Some were shy children, some were adults who had gone through pain, fear, or loss. Her music touched something deep inside them. Many cried, many smiled. Many stayed quiet but changed. One night in Germany, a boy came to her after the concert. He gave her a folded note. When she opened it later in her hotel room, it said, "Before tonight I felt invisible, but now I feel seen. Thank you for speaking without words." Mira kept that note in her notebook. The final stop of the tour was a center for children with special needs. Some were in wheelchairs, some couldn't speak, some couldn't move much at all. But they were all brought into the music room. Mira sat at the piano and began to play. She chose soft, playful melodies, ones that made you feel like you were floating, dreaming, smiling. Something magical happened. Some of the children began to move their fingers. One girl clapped in rhythm. A boy with no speech suddenly let out a happy shout. The staff and teachers were shocked. Tears filled their eyes. Mira didn't stop. She kept playing, letting her soul connect with theirs. It was as if they understood each other beyond the world of sound. Afterward, the head of the center said, "This wasn't just a performance. This was therapy. This was love." When the tour ended, Mira returned home tired but full of something. Knew a sense of quiet pride. She realized that her silence had become strength. Her fear had become courage. Her music had become a bridge between souls. One afternoon, as she sat at her window, a letter arrived. It was from the National Music Foundation. They were awarding her the Heart of Music Medal in honor given only to those who had used music. To bring emotional change to others? Myra looked at the letter, then looked at her fingers. She didn't smile widely, but her eyes sparkled. On the night of the award ceremony, she was asked to play again. It's time she played a piece she had been working on for months, her most personal composition yet. It was called The Sound of Silence. It began with a soft heartbeat, rhythm representing the time she spent in complete silence as a child. Then came a melody full of fear and loneliness, how she felt in school, in the world unheard and unseen. Then it changed. A small, warm note appeared representing the first time she touched the piano. It grew stronger. It became a river of sound, each note telling of her growth, her struggle, her joy, her truth at the end. The music slowed again, returning to silence. But this time, it wasn't sad. It was peaceful. Silence that no longer hurt but healed. The audience sat still, moved beyond words as Myra stood. A tear rolled down her cheek, and then something unbelievable happened. She turned toward the microphone, The hall went still. Then, with a soft, clear voice that shook like a new leaf in wind, she spoke her first words in public. "Thank you for hearing me." The room erupted in applause, but Mira didn't cry. She simply smiled. After that night, she still didn't speak often, but she had proved to herself that she could, if she wanted. Her silence was no longer a cage, it was a choice. Years later, she opened her own music center for children who felt different, those who struggled to speak, those who were quiet, sensitive, or lost. The center had no loud bells or rules, just instruments, soft lights, and teachers who listened with their hearts every day. Mira helped children find their voice, not always with words, but with sound, color, touch, and feeling. She would sit beside them, place their fingers gently on the keys, and say in her soft, slow voice, "Show me your heart." And they would, because Mira had once been the girl no one could hear. Now, she had become the one who helped others be heard. And through her, the world had learned an important truth. Silence is not emptiness, it is a hidden song.